Welcome, welcome. And as you can see, I'm sitting, well, maybe not, but here, let me show you quickly. I'm sitting in my sukkah, and this is, of course, the festival of Sukkot. So we're going to go straight to the text. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen. And we are starting the last chapter of the Torah. Here we are, chapter 34. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Vaya'al Moshe me'arvot Moav. Moses went up from the plain of Moab, El Har Nebo, to Mount Nebo. Rosh HaPisgah, the summit of Pisgah. Asher al pnei Yericho, which faces Jericho. Vayarehu Hashem, and Hashem showed him, God showed him, et kol haaretz, the entire land, the et ha-Gilad Adan, from Gilad to Dan. And let me just go, I'm going to do a new share quickly. Let's see if I can find it. I may need to look at, one moment, I may need to reconfigure something. So I'm going to stop that and keep you in the share that we have. And let me see, here we are. Okay. One moment. Okay, now I think I can do what I need to do. Let's see here. Okay, let's see, new share. That's this. All right, so here's the map of Israel. Okay, so here's Dan. Let me see if I can make it bigger. Yeah, I can. So here's Dan, right up here in the north. And Gilad, I actually am not certain where we would find that, but let me see if I can find it. If any of you know where it is. There's Gilgal, but that's not Gilad. So I'm not sure if because it sounds like he'd be talking from the north to the south, but I'm not sure. Could be that Gilead is not on here, on this map. So I'm sorry, I don't have, but there are some other places that are going to be mentioned. So for example, Soar is going to be mentioned. Okay, all right.
What about, but there was a point, there was Ranuth Gilead, right?
Yes, Ramoth Gilead. Oh, there it is. Yes,
Yeah.
thank you for noticing that. Yes, yeah. So I imagine he's talking. So Jericho, of course, is about here. There's Jericho right there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here's Mount Nebo. I can make this even a little bit bigger. Let's see what I can do here. So this is where he is, and you can see that it is opposite Jericho and opposite Jerusalem too. And so what this is telling you is that he's showing this here, this area here that he could see.
Wikipedia says Gilead is used in the Bible to refer to all the region east of the Jordan River.
Well, this is the Jordan here.
Yep.
And so this would be Gilead here.
Right.
Okay, cool. But it's nice that we actually see Mount Nebo here. I'm going to do a new share. Let me see if I can do this. I'm going to try something so that if we need to switch around, I can do it. Let me see if I can do that. Nope, that's not doing it. You see this, don't you, or you don't? Okay. Yeah, you see that? And let's see what happens if I do this. Nope, that's not doing it. Okay. But you're seeing the map. Are you seeing the map of Israel right now?
Yes.
You are. Okay, let me see what I can do. Trying to see what I can do here.
What are you attempting? Do you want me to go on and reading or something?
I have a double share is what's going on.
Oh yeah, you do. You have
So
the underneath.
I'm trying to see if I can get what's underneath. For some reason, I'm not able to. No, it's just switching around, and it's not going to the other thing. Oh, hold on a sec. Let's try that. There we are. Okay, I found it in the corner. All right. Okay, so, all right, we finished this. Yes, we finished the sentence. So let's take a look at the Rashi here. Me'arvot Moab, from the plains of Moab. Okay, El Har Nebo, Mount Nebo, Kama Ma'alot. Right. So from Me'arvot, now remember he went up from the plains of Moab to Mount Nebo. Kama Ma'alot Hayu. How many steps were there? In other words, that's a lot of steps. Upasa'an Moshe b'se'achat, and Moses transversed them in one step. So again, these kinds of statements that sound like gross exaggerations or as fabulous or something, I think, I tend to feel that it's speaking more in a literary style, that this is part of a literary style, and in a way it's saying it's possible that it's saying that Moses knew this was going to be his last moment, and yet he did not hesitate to go up to Mount Nebo immediately, that he didn't pause or do anything at all. Let's see if the map...
Rabbi?
Yes.
I have steps spelled Steppees.
Yes, I understand.
Which is a different thing than
Of course.
steps. So I don't know. What does Ivrit actually?
We can talk about this as being steps here. This would be, in other words, the steps when I said plain, right? We could say arvot, we could call that, this is the steps, but ma'alot are steps. They're regular steps.
Right. Okay.
So I'm going to...
Because he was, okay. Gotcha. All right.
Okay, now we're in shape. Okay, so here we are. Here's Moab, and here's Mount Nebo, and so he has to go from here up to Mount Nebo. And what Rashi's saying is he just went right away. Took one step to do it. All right, so I think now this is going to work for us. Et kol haaretz. So the point is this: it could have just said et haaretz. It could have just said the land. Okay, but it doesn't. It says kol haaretz, and that's what's going to trigger Rashi's comment here. Her'au et kol Eretz Yisrael. When it says all the land, it doesn't just mean geographically all the land, but he showed him all the land of Israel, Beshalvata, when it was at peace, Matzikin, and the oppressors, Ha'atidim liyot matzikin la, that would in the future oppress it. So when you're saying the land, we're not talking about just geographically, we're also talking about the land in terms of its development and all the occurrences that happened, because it says all the land. Because if he just said he showed him the land, we'd understand that he got to see the geographical locations that are going to be mentioned. But kol haaretz, that all is to include other kinds of ideas as well. Done. So up to Dan. So here we're going to go into the sort of historical levels of things here. Ahu b'nei Dan, he showed him the children of Dan, Ovdei avodat kochavim, worshipping idols. Shene'emar, as it states in Shoftim, in Judges chapter 18, Vayakimu lahem b'nei Dan et hapesel. Says the children of Dan raised up for themselves the statue. So that's one thing. So one of the reasons I believe that there's a tradition as to him showing, that God showing Moses these particular things, was so that Moses would pray on behalf of the Israelites and the Jewish people that they be protected from these kinds of things. Veher ahu Shimshon, he also showed him Samson, she'atid latzet mimenu, which in the future he would come out from the tribe of Dan. Shimshon was a Danite, the Moshiach, to save them, to come and save them. Next. So we're going to go through a whole series of these kinds of situations. Ve'et kol Naphtali, right? All of Naphtali, ve'et Eretz Ephraim u'Menashe, and the land of Ephraim and Menashe, ve'et kol Eretz Yehuda, and the entire land of territory of Judah, ad hayam ha'acharon, up until the final sea. And this means, it does mean, if you're facing east, then the Mediterranean is behind you. And of course, Acharon can mean behind you or the last or something like that. But the idea is it's talking about the Mediterranean. Et kol Naphtali. Her ahu artso b'shalvata v'churbana. So he showed its land, the land of Naphtali, in it at peace and in its destruction. Right, Churban, destruction. Veher ahu dvora uvarak, and he showed to Moses Deborah and Barak, mikadesh Naphtali, who were from a place called Kadesh Naphtali, so land of Naphtali. Nilchamim im Sisera v'chayalotav, battling, waging war with Sisera and his soldiers. Ve'et Eretz Ephraim and Menashe, the land of Ephraim and Menashe, Ahu Artsam v'shalvatam u'v'churbana. Likewise, he showed them their lands at peace and in their destruction. Ve'her Ahu Yehoshua, and he showed them Joshua, Nilcham in Malchei Canaan, battling against the kings of Canaan, Sheba me Ephraim, because he himself was a descendant of Ephraim. He was from the tribe of Ephraim. Ve'Gidon, and Gideon, Sheba mi Menashe, and Gideon, who was from the tribe of Menashe, Nilcham im Midian ve'Amalek, fighting with Midian and Amalek. Well, I think of Amalek as Joshua fighting Amalek, and clearly Gideon fighting with Midian. Ve'et kol Eretz Yehuda, and the entire land of Judah, v'shalvata u'v'churbana. Notice it's almost like a refrain, right? In its peace and in its destruction. Ve'er'ahu malchut Beit David v'nitzchonam, and he showed him the monarchy of the house of David and their victories. Ad yam ha'acharon, up until the Mediterranean. Eretz ha'ma'arav v'shalvata u'v'churbana, he showed him the western territories, again at peace and in their destruction. Kol. Davar acher, another interpretation. Al tikrei hayam ha'acharon, do not call this the last sea or the behind sea, ela hayom ha'acharon, right? But read it rather as the last day. Ahu HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that is, that the Holy One, blessed be He, showed him Kol HaMa'orot She'atidin Li'ara. He showed him all the events that would take place in the future, the Yisrael, to the Jewish people, Ad Sheyichyu HaMeitim, up until the resurrection of the dead. So let's take another look at this map a little bit, and we'll see. Right, so here's Naphtali, right? Naphtali. And we see Menashe here, quite large, right? And here's Ephraim. By the way, here's another Dan, but here's the Mediterranean right over here. Here's Judah. Okay. And we get to see all these areas here. Okay. All right. Let's go on back. Ve'et HaNegev, and he showed him the Negev. Rashi will explain where the Negev is. The Negev sort of means dry area as well, or arid area. Ve'et HaKikar. Yes, David.
So I just have a question listening to all this. if after Moses passed away, if Moses became did, why did God need to show him all these events in the future? Because once he passed away, he probably would be able to see all these events in the future. I just curious.
Yes. So there are probably better answers than I might be able to provide you right now. But the main answer that I'm aware of is the idea that Moses would pray on behalf of the Jewish people. That in some ways, okay, here's a thought just occurred to me, is that remember Moses longed to be in the land of Israel, and yet he was punished that he could never set foot there. And in a way, it would seem that that God was giving Moses an experience of being in the land of Israel, even if it was vicariously, in a very profound kind of way. So,
Okay.
by showing him all these things at this point while he was still alive and not while he was in the next world. That perhaps that's the point
Okay.
that's being made here. The degree to which God was revealing all of this, and especially with all the events that were taking place as well, that he was looking into the future. I mean, the question obviously that strikes me is that if these were all determined to happen, what kind of free will do people have? But the truth is that even though I think there's sort of a median ground, which sort of basically says, if you're not really mindful, if you don't take care of your tshuva, and of course we see how difficult it is for people to be even aware of wanting to do tshuva, or even aware of what the repentance needs to be, that the probabilities are very high of these things happening. And of course, in retrospect, they did happen, but they don't have to happen if people are willing to really look into their lives and examine them carefully. So anyway, just another thought, but I appreciate your raising that and the thought that this was a way of describing how Moses could experience going into the land without going into the land. So anyway, yeah. And the dry area, the plain, Bikat Yerecho, the valley of Jericho, Ir HaTamarmim, the city of dates, Ad Tzoar, until Tzoar. So we can look quickly at that too now, right? So remember, this is where he's standing, right? And he's getting to see a lot down here. Now we're describing the southern area, right? This area here, up until Tzoar, at the very bottom of the Dead Sea. Gets to see all of that. And of course, the Yam HaAcharun is this one, right? The sea behind. Let's go on. Let's see what Rashi has to tell us here. Ve'et HaNegev. So he says, Eretz Hadarom. He's saying now the southern area, right? The southern land. Davar Acher, another interpretation, Ma'arat HaMachpelah, the cave of Machpelah, Shene'emar, as it states in Numbers 13, which has to do with the 12 spies, Vayalu Negev, they went up in the Negev, Vayavo ad Chevron, and they came up until Chevron. So let's take a look at Chevron. Yes, David? David, were you trying to say something?
No, I didn't lower my hand. My apologies.
Oh, okay, no problem. So there's Hebron. Here it is. Hebron is pretty much south of Jerusalem. See that? We got Hebron south of Jerusalem, and we've got Shechem north of Jerusalem. So that's sort of just something to remember there. So he got to see this. And of course, we know that the patriarchs and Adam and Eve are all buried, patriarchs and matriarchs are all buried in the Hebron. The exception is Rachel. She is buried in Bethlehem, right there. So back into our text. Let's go on. Let's see here. Ve'et hakikar, right, the plain. Her ahu Shlomo, he showed him Solomon, Yotzek, who was smelting Kli Beit HaMikdash. He was forging the vessels of the temple, Shne'emar, as it states in Kings, first book of Kings, chapter 7, Bekikar HaYarden, says, in the plain of the Jordan, Yitzhakam HaMelech, the king forged them, B'ma'aveh ha'adamah, in the thickness of the earth. In other words, we know that they would use clay as molds in which to create the metallic objects. So let's go, let's try a little bit further. Okay. Vayomer el Hashem elav, Hashem, God said to him, Zot haaretz, this is the land, Asher nishbati la'Avraham, leYitzchak uleYaakov, that I swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, lemor, saying, Lezar'acha etnena, I will give it to your seed. Her'iticha be'einecha, I've shown it to you with your own eyes. You now have seen this. This is what God promised them. V'shama lo ta'avor, but there you shall not cross over. What's very beautiful, I think, is this idea as we're coming to the end of the Torah, that God is fulfilling the promise he made so many generations before to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and that it is actually happening at this point. Lemor lezaracha, here we go, right down here. Lezaracha etnena heriticha, to your seed, this is to Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, he said, to your seed I will give it, I have shown it to you. Kedei shetelech v'tomar, so that, this is really sweet, so that you shall go and say, LaAvraham, LiYitzchak, uLeYaakov, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Shvu'ah shenishba lachem HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the oath which the Lord swore to you, that the Holy One, blessed be he, swore to you, kaima, he has fulfilled it. Vezehu lemor, and that is the lemor, to say. In other words, to say to them, Lachach, and for this reason, Har'itiha, I've shown it to you, Lacha, to you, Aval Gzeirahi, but nevertheless it is an edict, Milfanai, from before me, Sheshama lo ta'avor, that you will not pass over into it, She'ilu leikach, right? Because were that the fact, were I to do that, Hayiti mekaimcha ad shetir otam netuim ukvuim ba, I would keep you alive up until you should see them planted and established in it, but telech v'tagid lahem, and then you would go and tell them. In other words, were I to allow you, I have this edict, I cannot let you actually go in and see them established in the land, but at least I've been able to show it to you to a point where you can say, this God has in fact fulfilled his promise. And we'll stop right here, and I'll mark the spot. We're getting very close to the end. I'm going to stop the share. Okay. Any comments before I stop the recording? Yeah? No?
No, not really. But are we meeting tomorrow?